Welcome to In the Hot Seat with the Tenney Group. I'm Spencer Tenney. It's good to be with you. Have the one and only Jeremy Reymer from DriverReach, founder and CEO, with us today. I cannot wait to jump right in here, sir. Jeremy, welcome.
Thank you so much. Excited to be here with you.
Well, likewise. So let's jump right in and heat things up. Just real quick, let's just take 20 seconds. Tell us about DriverReach and what you're doing for the trucking logistics industry right now.
At the end of the day, we're an applicant tracking system. We're helping companies hire drivers faster and more efficiently. So addressing the driver shortage, leveraging technology to make that a better process, for all parties, all stakeholders.
All right, that's pretty succinct there. Um, um, that being said, I gotta know. I'm looking at all these books. I'm already fascinated. So I have to ask, how did you even get into trucking? What's your story there?
Yeah, it's interesting. As most people, when I talk to a lot of people, kind of similar background. You stumbled into it almost accidentally, and then you realize, whoa, this is amazing! What a great industry and so many great relationships. But I actually moved. I didn't get into trucking until 2003 when I moved to Indiana from Southern California, from Los Angeles. Prior to that, I worked on the trading floor of the Pacific Stock Exchange until it closed. But so my background is really more in securities, trading securities as a specialist on the trading floor. But had an opportunity to, small family business in Indianapolis, a driver staffing company actually, and I said, oh, maybe let's give it a shot, and then it just really opened my eyes to the demands for drivers and just what a great industry. And so, one thing led to another, and next thing you know, I'm starting a technology company.
Well, I love it. It's the American dream. So let me jump into some heavy stuff. Driver shortage. All kinds of thought leaders have different viewpoints. Do we have a driver shortage or not?
Well, you have to. I mean, I think it's they. I guess with the people who disagree, or it's all nuanced then, because at the end of the day, do you have greater needs than the available drivers? Certainly qualified drivers in the market, and it's not even a question. Of course, not even close. And every year you have more drivers leave the industry than new entrants coming in. That's not sustainable. That's a systemic problem. So I think the short answer is absolutely. And raising pay, while that's still very important and relevant, that's not the silver bullet. That's not gonna change the dynamic or the trajectory.
Yeah. So this is kind of where our worlds intersect a little bit, because we have all these functions. You're talking about 40% pay increases. It's a major expense line item, which affects bottom line, which affects business value, which affects how I make a living in M&A. So, let's talk about that. As far as there's two areas. We're trying to get drivers, but we need sustainable businesses. So what are some of the things that you're noticing trend-wise that you see are positive trends that are also sustainable as it relates to driver recruitment and retention?
Well, I think a lot of companies, from a recruiting standpoint, and hopefully we'll get into the 18 to 20-year-old driver, because I think that's a really big deal, and I think that kind of will dovetail directly into what you just talked about and how important it is to maintain costs and everything. But as is, the minimum age is 21, right? And so this is the hand that we're dealt. And so from a recruiting standpoint, by the way, the cost to recruit today is way higher than it's ever been. There's so much competition, so much demand, and so you're spending way more to get fewer drivers than you were able to before. The best thing I think you can do in that environment is be a good employer. Be the type of employer that drivers want to work for, that are less likely to leave. And then how do you leverage those drivers that you have, create an environment where they want to promote working for you. So you want to create sort of almost an ambassadorship type of program for referral purposes. That's going to be your not only cheapest, I shouldn't say cheapest, least expensive way to get new driver applicants in the funnel, but more importantly, they stay longer, they last longer. They didn't come to the company through some bait and switch type of promotion. It was more of, look, I really like it here. I think you'd like it here too. And it comes from a place of trust, because it's not the company selling it. It's a driver who's in it, who knows, who's speaking firsthand.
So I find that really interesting. I also find what you said earlier pretty interesting, just in terms about accelerating the process, which to me that has to be, half or 3/4 of the battle to try to get the right person in the seat doing what they need to do. So speak to the acceleration. What are some of the factors that accelerate that recruitment process, which is so critical?
Yeah, well, I mean, today especially, everybody is on a mobile device. You've got to make it easy for a driver to apply on a mobile device. ABC trucking companies out there today, and if they say, we're fine, we still have the download PDF, application button on our website, and that's assuming you even have a website, which is table stakes. It's got to be mobile optimized. But then even having the ability to apply, you'd be surprised how many websites you go to and you say, like, how do you hire drivers? And they're like, well, I mean, they come in and fill out an app. How? I mean, how do you even attract them in the first place? What are you doing? There's so much opportunity and room for improvement, and that's the frustrating part for me. Is I see this, I'm like, I want to help. I can help you. I would do it for free if I could. Except I built all this technology and that costs a lot of money. But I want to help because I know that there's such room for improvement. And then you got to make it easy for a driver to apply and get them into your funnel. But then even still, it's a highly regulated industry that we're in. There's so much compliance-related process that you have to go through. It takes time, but if you leverage technology, you can certainly reduce that significantly. Most specifically, previous employment verification process, because that's generally the most manual and most painful part of qualifying and hiring a driver. But still, even beyond that, once you've run all the necessary background checks, you've had dialogue with the driver, and you get them set up for a pre-employment drug test. They get their physical taken care of. Even just the process of getting them into an onboarding process and orientation. Try to make that. You got to think about this from the applicant's point of view, and from their lens, what is that experience that you're providing them? Are you communicating with them regularly? Is it as painless as possible? Because when there's so much competition, that's an area that will absolutely help you stand out if you really think about this whole process from their perspective and make it as optimized for their experience as possible.
So what would you, and obviously I know that you work with some certainly some best in class companies within our industry. So I think it would be helpful for our audience to understand what's the general average as far as the recruitment process, and then how does that compare to the folks that are the best in class and really winning in this area of business?
Well, speed to hire is critical. But when you break that down, certainly from the very beginning, I think it's really important from a company. I know I said that you got to be a good employer, and I can't emphasize that enough because you can't hide that. It'll come back. Top down, you've got to be a good employer. So start there. That's a decision. It really is. So make a decision to be a good employer. Treat your employees well. Beyond that, you got to figure out, okay, what is it? What's our brand, our messaging? Who are we? How do we position ourselves that resonates with the driver, that's most attractive to our drivers, that the ideal driver that we're trying to attract, and then make sure that we're communicating that clearly, succinctly, and consistently, and in a variety of channels. Because I do get asked a lot, what are the best recruiting channels, this one versus that one, and I think the answer is all of them. You need to use all of them and test and make sure that you're measuring what's working and what's not, and then make your decisions according to that data. So it's important that you have the ability to measure that stuff. And then I talk to the applicant experience when a driver applicant applies, whether that's through a short form or a full DOT application. It's really important that that a recruiter or somebody at that company communicate with them right away. You can't let that sit for days. So that's another, sort of best in class, practice. And stay and move them swiftly. You have to really think of it as an hourglass, turned upside down. The clock is ticking. You gotta, this is not at all to sacrifice safety or compliance, but it is to be certainly as efficient and optimized and streamlined that as possible. And then when you get them in for, even when you're bringing them in for orientation, anytime that you can leverage technology to get some of that information to them ahead of time, electronic documents and those sorts of things, it keeps them engaged. It allows for a much more efficient process. And when they do show up, you're not making them do a bunch of paperwork that they're signing over and over again the same information. They're able to get through whatever orientation you have planned. Hopefully it's really concise, and then they can get behind the wheel and start generating some revenue for themselves and for the company.
I really like what you said a moment ago about step one, decide to be a good employer. I mean, it's not that it's easily said, not necessarily easy to execute. So it all kind of comes back to culture, which is like the the culmination of just so many deposits within a group of people over a period of time, and what that means. So how important is it to the folks in that process of trying to bring in a very competitive market, like what role does culture play?
Number one, and I say that because when you ask a driver, why did you leave? Money is a thing, right? I mean, let's not pretend that it's not, but it's never the number one thing. It's usually respect, how they felt, how did you make them feel while working there? And because a lot of times people say, oh, we treat them with respect. They didn't feel that way. And it really doesn't matter, what you say you do, or even what you do. It's how they feel about what you do. So you just have to, again, this gets back to thinking about it through their lens. And this isn't just a driver statement. I'd say this, any employee across any company, and I'm saying this, I have a lot of conviction about it as an employer. We just crossed over 50 employees, at DriverReach. This matters a ton. And this is not it starts with me, and it has to, but everybody that's underneath me from a leadership standpoint is the same. We're very consistent in how serious we take culture and transparency and accountability and honesty. I mean, those things are really, really important. People, when, they're not used to that, sadly. And so when they get accustomed to it, I think it's you don't want to leave. You don't have a lot of turnover. It's the right way to be, and it is a decision. It's a decision. It's intentional.
And I think so, and I see you being very intentional with relationships across the industry, and I can imagine, like, through those relationships, you picked up on quite a few things from some of the best people in there as it relates to culture. So back to respect. What are three specific ways that you see our industry peers giving respect to all of their employees, not just drivers, and how is that affecting their culture?
Well, I think communication is a big one, right? When they feel like they know what's going on and there's open lines of communication, even if it's just one way, it's better than no way. Now, you add to that, layer on top of that, feedback, and getting feedback from people and soliciting it consistently with intent. And the intent is, I want to hear it, and I want to be able to respond to it. Sometimes it's a suggestion on a policy that we just can't do anything about, i.e., the driver would love to have a policy that allows for passengers because, my grandchild is on summer break, and it would be great if I could bring him, along with me and it's just, the answer is no, we can't do that. But here's why, so communicate that. And obviously, if there's ever something that is suggested that you can do something about it right away and communicate with them that, hey, we got this great feedback, we agreed, what a great idea, and here's what we're doing. it's that sort of thing that says, huh, they listen, they care what I have to say. And I think that speaks volumes to the respect, checking that respect box. They feel like they have a voice, and that you care what their thoughts or opinions are.
No, I think that's sound feedback right there. Um, so you mentioned this briefly. So let's dig in here a little bit. These 18 to 20-year-old drivers. Where are we with that conversation, and what role will that demographic play in kind of addressing some of the systemic challenges that the trucking industry faces moving forward?
So I'm a little bit I'm on a pretty extreme over here. I've been a huge proponent of the idea for, I don't know, the last 10 years. I remember when Shorty Whittington was the chairman of ATA, he and I were having this conversation, and I said, we have got to get this down to high school graduates because, and this hasn't changed. It's only gotten worse, frankly, since then. I don't know what year that was. It was before 2010, I think. Um, but the reality is the minimum age today is 21, yet the average age of a new entrant going through truck driver training school is, depending on who you ask, it's between 35 and 38. That is not a sustainable, pool of applicants coming in. We are completely missing the mark for those, we're not getting enough 21-year-olds, 22, 23, 24. And so I the reason why I said I'm way over here on this end of the spectrum, I truly believe that if we can get this legislation passed or a regulation passed that reduces that minimum age to 18, I honestly think within 5 years we will not be talking about driver shortage again. I really believe that with the number, you don't need that many every year of new entrants coming out of high school that say, I want to do that job. I mean, and just to expand on that a little bit more, I graduated from high school and I went to college right away. Not because I knew what I wanted to do, because I wanted to get out of the house. I was free. And so now I'm saddled with debt. I was directionless. I didn't know where I was going. And instead, if I had an opportunity to make 50, 60, 70, upwards, thousands of dollars a year, more money I'd ever seen in my life as a, 18, 19-year old, and be free, that is amazing. And you get one or two classes of these sorts of folks coming through that sort of system, and everyone else, their peers that are graduating, I want to do that. I want to do that. And especially when they see when they step inside the cab of a tractor today and the technology that's there, I mean, it's ripe for youth, but it's not an option today. And so I'm a huge proponent of it, as I shared. It's been something that at the legislative level, it's been pushed for several years in a row, and now we've got a pilot program that's kicking off that will enable up to 3,000 18 to 20-year-olds get their CDL and operate in an interstate capacity. So we'll see what data we're able to extract from that 3-year pilot program, and I'm optimistic that the end result of that will be a reduction in that minimum age.
Well, I'm anxious to monitor this issue as well. What do you think about, obviously, all the statistics suggest that women in trucking are also affecting this gap. To what degree do you think, that trend will help close the driver shortage gap?
Significantly, honestly. I don't think anything I'm a little, way over here, but I don't think anything will have the impact that the minimum age will. But that being said, I'm a huge proponent of women in trucking, been a member for a long time, and also an advocate. There's only, they're maybe pushing 10% at best. And so there's a lot of room for improvement there, not only to address the labor challenges, get more women, to reduce the demands from a labor pool standpoint, but I would say from an image standpoint too. And that's a twofold statement. Image from, and I'll use, when I was single, my house looked like I was a bachelor, right? When I got married, or, my house looked nice. And I know that's very, typical, but it's relevant. I think from an image standpoint, women make the trucking industry better, image-wise, but also safety-wise. I'm on ATRI's Research Advisory Committee, and one of the reports that came out a few years ago about women, about women versus male drivers is statistically in every category, women were safer commercial drivers. It was mind-boggling. It was great to see. I guess I'm not surprised, but it was really cool to be able to highlight that and hopefully use that as an opportunity to attract more women to the industry.
Yeah, it is fascinating. I've seen that data. Again, not surprised by it. And it just opens up those possibilities. Like, yeah, we can solve a lot of problems if we can just build on that.
Right.
So one last question for you, Mr. Reymer. Now I've noticed you on the show floor for years now. You're one of the sharper dressed men at these events. I've got a little challenge. I work with finance guys, and when it comes to fashion, it's a sad state of affairs. So, what are the 3 recommendations that you give to my guys that are absolutely phenomenal when it comes to finance and problem solving? But if some of these younger guys wanted to go try to get a date, they'd be in some trouble. So, what 3 fashion tips would you give my young analysts to up their fashion game?
Well, it costs money if you want to buy nice, suits or blazers or anything like that. But I think anytime you can get them custom, that is the best. Again, it's not inexpensive, but they'll last a really long time as long as you don't, gain or lose a ton of weight, which, by the way, I got a lot of jackets pre-COVID, and then, lack of exercise through those 2 years, and probably more drinking than I'm proud to admit, certainly didn't help, but I'm getting back into the groove, and I think you feel better. I think you look better. Then it's colors that you like, colors that help you stand out. Not in a way, hopefully, that's gaudy or anything like that, but enough that it's fun to talk about. You stand out a little bit. I think that really helps. And then exude confidence. I think comes from it. And to your dating point, I think having confidence goes a long way, even if you're pretending.
I love it. Well, thank you for that sage advice. I'm sure they will be very appreciative of that, sir. Hey, thanks for all you're doing for our industry. I love the way that you care for our peers in the industry. I love the way that you work and continually grow to provide value for our peers. So all great things. And so that's going to do it for us in the hot seat, Mr. Reymer. We'll see you next time.